Hi, I'm Rohan Gavaskar. You're listening to me and watching me on Taking It Slow podcast. If you like what the brothers do, you guys know the drill. Like, subscribe, press whatever you need to press, and watch more of their content.
It's a Sunday, you know what that means. It's time to take it slow. और विशु क्या हाल चाल?
It's a Sunday, or it means that today is the fourth day of the test match. So
It was supposed to be the fourth day of a test match. Now मतलब 5 दिन में 2 टेस्ट मैच खत्म हो गए हैं.
हाँ यार, and to be very honest, it was not about the pitch. मतलब ठीक है, थोड़ा बहुत था, लेकिन
It
बहुत ही
is
ज्यादा रोना धोना हुआ है.
never about the pitch. It is about the mental application that you have.
यार एक ना बहुत ही थोड़ा फिलोसॉफिकल डीप कॉन्सेप्ट हो जाएगा ये शायद. तो ना जब आपने बोला कि आज हमारा कौन गेस्ट आने वाला है एंड यू टोल्ड मी कि हम उनसे मैनचेस्टर यूनाइटेड के बारे में भी बात करेंगे, ठीक है, तो
जो हमने नहीं की.
जो हमने नहीं की बिकॉज ही इज अ वेरी बिजी मैन. तो लोग ऐसे फुटबॉल को इतना ऐसे क्लब्स के क्यों दीवाने क्यों हो जाते हैं? लाइक व्हाट इज द फन ऑफ इट? सो माय थ्योरी इज कि एज अ ह्यूमन हम लोग मतलब एवरीवेयर वी आर ट्राइंग टू फाइंड अ सेंस ऑफ बिलोंगिंग. ऐसा लगता है आपको? पीपल वांट दैट क्योंकि अब बहुत वो लोनली होते जा रहे हैं लोग.
हाँ, people are looking for community despite being in
Yeah.
silos themselves.
हाँ, सही में यार. I
ये
think
था
this-
ना काफी profound statement.
हाँ. साइलो वर्ड डालो ना किसी में.
Silo or holistic में काफी key phrase है. Anyway, coming
तो
to
शुरू करते हैं फिर?
the guest today, the first international cricketer that I will have the pleasure of having a conversation with. I've met quite a few when I used to play. I met quite a few. I've shook hands. I've clicked pictures with them, but a proper conversation, and that is why I love doing this podcast. I never imagined कि हम लोग will have a chance of having a one-on-one conversation with someone who has represented the country in a sport that I love, and probably the most famous surname in Indian cricket history.
No
Debatable.
points for guessing.
Without any further ado, let's dive right in, people. Our guest today has played 11 ODIs for India, scored a 50 and dismissed Andrew Symonds for the best cotton bowl ever recorded in TV history. He's played 75 matches in Ranji first class, almost scored 7,000 runs, picked 40 wickets, the best being 5 for 3. One of the very few people who have played both in the ICL and the IPL. He's a wonderful commentator and a man with pristine taste because he supports the best football club in the world, Manchester United. Extremely proud and humbled to be joined by Rohan Gavaskar. Welcome to the podcast, Rohan. Welcome to Taking It Slow. How are you doing, man?
Thank you, guys. All good in Raipur at the moment for the Master Series. Here for another 15 days. Looking forward to that. We've already seen yesterday what Sachin and Viru are capable of still doing. So looking forward to some more of that.
Yes. Like I think we had our best openers playing in this series, I guess. Not in the test match.
I mean, look, Sachin and Viru, absolute legends. All-time greats. Just to see them back in action and batting the way they did was magnificent.
Rohan, we had prepared a lot of opening points about the test match that is going on right now. I had thought of a lot of stuff and that was going on. I thought a lot. I'll ask you what are the England chances over the 4th day and the 5th day? Can they survive and all? But it has all been dumped into the trash. 3rd day pe khatam. Two test matches finishing in the span of 5 days. How does
but look, I think sometimes what happens is as a team you go to another country and you get into a mental block on how to play on those pitches. Considering the fact that Joe Root got a double 100 in the first innings, he's looked a class above, honestly, everyone else in that England team. He looked a class above everyone else in that team. But all the other players, they've just come out there and some of the shots that they've played have been atrocious.
True.
No, I mean, it's just that, as a player, you sometimes get into a good zone where everything you do, everything you touch turns to goal. Everything you do is right. And sometimes you can get into a bad zone where you're just, crippled with fear, crippled with self-doubt. and you have no idea what to do. You're lost. You're searching for runs. The bowlers, they call it the yips. When the ball doesn't come out of the hand properly, and just you're bowling full tosses, short pitch deliveries.
Hmm.
It can happen to batsmen as well, and I think that's what's really been the case over here. Yes, the pitches have been testing. They haven't been easy to bat on, but
right?
Hmm.
if you look at this
That-
Indian team right
They're
now,
not
you've got
supposed to
someone
be, no,
like
Rohan. It is called Test cricket for a reason. They're not supposed to be
no, no,
easy.
but
You are
but
supposed to.
test cricket is not just about pitches. Test cricket is also
Yeah,
about
Hmm.
you playing. You're playing against quality players, and that you're testing yourself against
True.
the best players. So it's not just about testing pitches. I mean, there's a lot of good Test cricket being played on flat surfaces. Uh,
Hmm.
and there's lots of good Test cricket being played on seaming surfaces. There's a lot of good Test cricket played on challenging surfaces like this. But the point I was trying to make is that Akshar Patel can get to nearly a half century. Washington Sundar can get to
yeah,
100.
Yeah.
exactly.
Rishabh Pant,
Yeah.
we know Rishabh Pant is a fantastic player. He's got to 100 coming, from a
Yes,
situation of being 80 for 4. Uh,
Yeah.
so the pitch isn't really that bad. It's just the mental block, and suddenly you find England in their second at 30 for 4, 40 for whatever. It's more of a mental state of mind, which sort of crippled them in this Test series.
yeah,
So, Rohan, we had Bharat Sundaresan, who is a cricket writer, and Joyda as well over the last few episodes on, and we felt that the difference between the series, difference between the two sides, has been the quality of Indian spinners. I mean, even if the Indian batting lineup had to face the Indian spinners, they wouldn't have done well. The difference in quality between the
No,
English,
I tend to disagree, and as much as you're absolutely right, where the quality of the Indian spinners has been far better than the quality of the English spinners on display.
right.
I think the Indian batsmen have batted better than the English batsmen as well. So it's a little harsh on the Indian batsmen to say that they wouldn't have got runs against the Indian spinners. They like to put up these hypothetical situations where,
Yeah,
hmm,
yeah.
oh, would
hmm,
the
hmm,
Indian
hmm,
why? Can you with what guarantee can you say that the Indian batsmen would not have done well against the Indian spinners? What guarantee do you have?
hmm. It
No,
is just a
Do you
no
have any?
hypothesis.
guarantees.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, do you have any sort of guarantee that they would or
Nope.
they
Nope.
wouldn't? Or you don't. So why
Yeah.
go down that route? All you have to say
Hmm.
is Indian spinners bowled better than the Indian better than their counterparts, and the Indian batsmen bowled better than the this thing. You don't have to compare someone to prove that someone's better. You don't have to compare two people to say, okay, X is better
Absolutely.
than
Yeah.
Y. X is good. You don't
Yeah.
have to say Y was shit.
it just makes for a good story, like of Rocky,
Yeah,
the
but
last Rocky film.
no,
Like, would the best Rocky would win with the current champion or not? It's just a nice story to tell.
yeah, but this is
Yeah,
not about stories, right? That's a movie. This is
yeah,
real life. And when you're you're demeaning Indian batsmen by saying that they wouldn't have done well.
yeah.
They may not have, but you've
Hmm.
got you've got an all-time great in Virat Kohli. In that Indian lineup, you've got someone like Rohit Sharma who played an outstanding innings of 100 in that Test match. Then you've got
Hmm.
someone like Rishabh Pant who's been absolutely terrific, and you're doing nothing but demeaning them.
So has Rishabh Pant's keeping been the biggest positive from this tour so far?
Well, look, he's going to have good days and bad days when it comes to his keeping. There's no doubt about that. Uh, he's in my eyes, he's more of a he's obviously a top class batsman. There's no doubt
Yeah,
about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and and at the moment, his keeping obviously still needs to improve. But yes, it has improved, and he will have good days and bad days. But when you've got a player like Rishabh Pant, uh, with someone of Rishabh Pant's ability with the bat, you make allowances. You make allowances
Hmm.
for what they can't do simply because of the fact that they can do so much more with one other
yeah,
department. It's like you're a United fan. If you
Yeah.
if you listen to any of the United legends, they'll say Cristiano Ronaldo had after a while they tolerated the fact that he wouldn't track back only because of
Yeah.
what he would do for
Yeah.
them in front of goal.
Yeah.
He was given that license by Sir Alex Ferguson. Listen, if you don't want to track back, we'll get someone else to do it for you. You just do what you've got to do in front of goal, and so you make these little allowances for special players.
Rohan, tracking back to the shift that has happened over the last decade or so in cricket, you've been someone who has played in the previous era, say a decade back, pretty extensively. Now you've been observing the game from very close quarters, as the game has evolved over the last decade or so, what are the key changes that you see? So we've heard a number of discussions like the bats have changed, the boundary sizes have reduced. I wanted to understand from you about the finer details, like how has the fitness regime changed in the players' heads? How has diets changed,
No,
for
but see,
example? What are the
but
hmm,
but fitness regimes, diets, again, these are all generational changes.
hmm,
You look at how the fitness of the players from the 90s and early 2000s were to what the fitness levels of players now are, and that's a generational change. You'll find players not just at the international level, even at the domestic level, far fitter than they were back then. Uh, but it's not just the Indian team that's changed in that level. So if your
Yep.
fitness levels across the world were say a 6 on 10 in the 1990s, across the world they're now 8 on 10.
hmm,
So that playing
yep,
field, as far as fitness levels is concerned, um, is the same all across. I look, what's been a change in terms of if you take white ball cricket,
hmm,
1 day cricket, the fact that there are two balls being used now as opposed to
hmm,
one ball back in the.
hmm,
Hmm.
So the chances of reverse swing in the 35th, 40th over is far less because you know that one
Yes.
ball isn't getting as old. So it's easier to play now in the 35th, 40th over. You've also got your field restrictions have changed. You know, if you have to get a boundary or two boundaries and over towards the end of the
hmm,
innings or even in the middle part of the innings, very, very possible with that field restriction. So all these rule changes make it easier for the batsman as compared to how it was for batsmen um, during, say, the 90s or 2000s. So, I mean, if you talk to some of the batsmen who plundered runs in the 90s and 2000s, and you ask them, how many more runs do you think you'd have had with these changes, with the fact that, bats are better, uh, two new balls,
yeah.
and the fact that
Boundaries are
field change made.
smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, if you take for example someone like Yuvraj Singh, he's played 300 ODIs. Okay,
Yep.
now forget boundaries. Boundaries don't really make a difference because smaller, bigger, the balls are just flying out of the ground. But the fact
Yep.
Hmm,
that with the field restriction and the two new balls, let's how this thing. If he scored
hmm,
10 more runs, just 10 runs, which is two shots, a six and a boundary. If he had scored 10 more runs in each of those innings, he would have had three
Yeah.
thousand more runs.
yep.
Right.
Yeah, over 300 games. That's two balls where he's got a boundary and a
Yep.
six,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
whatever. That's 3,000 more first class runs. The cricketers batsmen who were scoring about 150, 160 back then would have been scoring 200s.
Hmm,
So that's the change. That's the one big change. So now when you take stats into account, a lot of people will just look at numbers right now and say, oh, this one's got
Yeah. Yeah.
so many numbers and strike rate, blah blah. They don't take into account the situation and the circumstances. Uh, and the change in rules that were being played back then earlier. So you've got to isolate. Statistics can be misleading. You've got to isolate numbers, and honestly, the best way to sort of gauge is see how that person's numbers compares with his peers, the other players of his
hmm,
generation,
Hmm.
and then you get a fair
hmm,
idea. You know who the greats of a certain generation were. If you look in the 90s and 2000s, there's Tendulkar, there's Ponting, there's Sangakkara, Brian Lara, Steve Waugh. You look at their numbers and Rahul Dravid, and I'm just naming a few, and they're
hmm.
pretty much Jacques Callis pretty much close to each other. In tests they all average 52, 53, 55.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like 53 plus basically. In 1 days also the averages are pretty similar. So that's how you gauge. It's impossible to gauge someone from you say you take 1 day cricket in ODI cricket back in the 80s. If you had
Yep.
a strike rate of about you think of the most successful opening partnership at that point. You think of Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes in
Desmond
1 day
Haynes.
cricket,
Yes. Hmm.
and their strike rate is about 66, 67.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Near about 70. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, less than 70 or thereabouts. Not
Hmm.
can't be far more than 70. But now, if you played with a strike rate of 70, you wouldn't play too
Yeah.
many 1 day
Maybe
games.
Yeah.
maybe
But
you're
that,
not even fit for a test match.
but that doesn't take away the fact that Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes were quality, quality, quality players.
Yeah. That is
Yeah. In
probably
this
why
point,
Viv Richards is a true generational great. I mean, in that era, he had a strike rate of around 90 in that era. That is why he's a
No, no.
true outlier of the game.
Well, the true outlier of the game is Don Bradman. Don Bradman averages
True.
99. He's a true
Hundreds.
he's a
True.
true outlier. He's a true outlier across sport.
Yeah.
Because if you look at numbers, if you look at, I mean, that's the other thing. People just look at numbers. I mean, if you talk about tennis and you want to talk about GOAT, people talk about Federer, they talk about Nadal, they talk about Djokovic. No one talks about Lever. So as I was saying, Don Bradman, he's the true outlier because his numbers across generations, whether it's the
Yeah.
30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, doesn't matter which
Yep.
generation you are. They're head and
uh,
shoulders above everyone else.
yep. Rohan, speaking of Don Bradman, I always had this question to ask you, because you are probably one of the only three people who can relate to what I'm going to ask you now. Arjun Tendulkar recently went up for the auction and was picked up by Mumbai Indians, and massive level of trolling has already begun. Uh, People are calling that pick a nepotistic pick, and a lot of devil has been written about it already. I don't want
Yeah.
to go deeper into that. So when that was going on, I thought only two people can relate to this across the globe. Either the son of Sir Donald Bradman, who in fact changed his name for a while to shy off the abuse. He changed his name to Brad's son, and you. Uh, what is the mental stress that Arjun is going through right now?
Well, let's hope there's no mental stress. Let's hope he's
Hmm.
shied away from social media and really paying attention to it. Look, I see a lot of these memes about Arjun getting picked and Pranav, the guy who scored 1,000 runs
Yeah.
today, not telling.
He already
Dhanwade,
left
yeah.
playing
But
cricket.
that,
Yeah.
but people don't realize that no one's heard of him after that 1,000 runs, and that
Yeah.
1,000 runs
Yeah.
was
Yep,
in an
yep.
under 14 or under 15 school game where
That
the
thousand
boundary
ton
was
is a
about 30
separate
yards,
story altogether. Yeah.
where the boundary was about 30 yards, and
Yeah.
apparently the kids that were in the opposition were about 10-year-olds.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like.
I mean, I don't. It's not his fault. It's not the
Hmm.
guy's
Yeah.
fault that he scored 1,000 runs. You want to score as many as you can,
Yeah.
uh, and it's not his fault that other people are using him as a this thing. But
Hmm.
I mean, but to
Hmm.
use him as something to beat Arjun with is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Arjun's played for India under 19. He's played for Mumbai in the Mushtaq Ali. And if
Hmm.
a team wants to pick him, they'll pick him. No one's
Hmm.
Yep.
uh, look, tomorrow if an IPL team wants to pick one of you guys, they're well within the rights to pick one of you guys.
Yep.
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 What's to stop them? I mean,
Yep.
you have so many players in an IPL team who I Varun Chakravarti and all weren't playing first class cricket when they got picked.
Yep.
Yep.
KC Karyappa, they saw him play in a T20 league and they picked him.
Hmm.
Mystery spinners, and obviously Varun's done exceedingly well. He's going to be, uh, you know, he's been picked for the Indian team, and he's done
Hmm.
really well for his
Hmm.
IPL teams. Uh, but when they were picked because of they'd seen some performance in their respective state leagues, and the
Yep.
scouts said, okay, listen, we can go ahead and we can play with these guys. We think they'll
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
well. You don't have to have played uh, a certain amount of first class cricket or Mushtaq Ali or whatever. You take Washington Sundar. Washington Sundar right now is
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
Test cricket without having played first class cricket, and he's doing
Yep.
Yeah.
it
Since last 4 years.
phenomenally
He's
well.
doing amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So look, sometimes you've got to try and find that that spark, that talent, and hopefully the Mumbai team seen that spark and talent with Arjun because he's been part of the team for a while. He's trained with them.
Hmm.
He's bowled to them in the net, so they
Hmm.
know what they're doing. So one
Yep.
can only wish Arjun all the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think here one of my theories comes into picture. I feel that wherever you are in life, you deserve exactly that. Now, if Arjun Tendulkar goes on to become the best Indian player ever, he deserves exactly that. And if he doesn't even make it to the Indian side, he will deserve exactly that. So if he is being picked into the Mumbai side, he deserves it. Like no one
Look,
can take it away from him.
no, no, absolutely. Look, in sport, it's very different. In sport, you've got a gazillion eyes focused on you. You've got the
Exactly.
media
Hmm.
analyzing everything you do in terms of your performances. You've picked up wickets, you've not scored runs, you've picked up catches, you've dropped catches. Everyone knows everything that you
Yeah,
do. So,
every data.
so there's no escape. Uh, you either you'll do well and have a long career, or if you don't do well, you won't have a long career. It's as
Hmm.
simple as that.
Rohan, you spoke about the media scrutiny on everybody. It must have been it must have been immense when you were growing up as well. Uh, every move of yours would have been scrutinized because obviously
No, I
people
think
need stuff to write.
I think it's completely different now because back then, I mean, now I think it's a lot tougher, to be honest, on
Hmm.
the kids of today. What with social media and digital media
Hmm.
and everyone, having a camera on their phone, everyone recording everything. I think it's a lot tougher now
Hmm.
than it was back in my day. But you slowly learn to live with that pressure, and you slowly learn to accept it, and like you said, you try to be the best that you can be. You're not worried about trying to compare yourself with XYZ. You just want to be the
Hmm.
best. If you're playing cricket, you want to be the best cricketer that you can be.
As a layman, I want to ask you a very layman question. Uh, how significant is the step up from Ranji cricket to international cricket? Because you've obviously experienced both, uh, and I could only dream. So I have played cricket at a very very basic level. I
Yeah, so just sorry to cut you in, but I think it was a big step up back in the day. Now with the
hmm,
IPL, you're playing
Yeah.
with and against international quality bowlers all the time, whether it's in the game or in
hmm,
the nets. You're practicing against them, so you know where you stand. The other thing to always remember is that as a cricketer, you would play a lot of cricket, say at the first class level. Sometimes you see your teammates get picked for the Indian team, or you see
hmm,
someone
Yeah.
from your zone get picked for the Indian team, and you've played with them. You know how they are. You know what you are, and when they do well, that gives you confidence because okay, listen, if X, Y, and Z can do well at that level, and I'm scoring as
hmm.
many runs as he is, or sometimes I'm scoring more runs than he is. You try and sometimes you try and get confidence from that.
One final question to you, Rohan. You obviously transitioned into a broadcaster role now. What is the level of preparation that you have to do before you go into a broadcasting stint?
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, look, you obviously got to know who's playing.
Hmm.
And when I say who's playing, I'm not sure what the teams who are playing, but players,
Yeah.
Okay.
what, and look, because sometimes there could be some new players playing who you may not know of. So you speak to,
Hmm.
if it's say a South African team and you don't know, you might speak to someone from South Africa and ask them, listen, hey, what
Yeah.
can you tell me
Yeah.
about so and so? If it's a Sri Lankan team, you'll call up a Sri Lankan friend, who's part of the business, part of the
Yeah.
fraternity, and say, look, what do you think of this guy?
Yeah.
What's his strength? What's his weakness? Then you try and get some data in terms of what their past performances are, what the team's past performances are, and
Hmm.
uh, you try and incorporate that whenever there's an opportunity to do so while broadcasting. We obviously get a lot of help
Hmm.
from the statisticians, from the
Hmm.
producer, the director. They tell you what's coming up,
Yep.
what pictures they're going to show, and you try and build a story around it. You try and work towards that. So there's a lot of help that you get from statisticians and people out there behind the scenes working really hard to make sure that the pictures that come across are good ones. So if they're working hard, it's only fair that you put in
Yeah.
your hard
Yeah.
work and you
No.
sort of do what you can to make the broadcast a success.
It was
Thank you, man.
absolutely lovely chatting to you, Rohan. Thank
Yeah,
you so much for
great,
taking time
brilliant.
out,
No
man.
worries.